All right, Kevin back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today I'm here with Kris Dehnert. Kris, welcome to the show. So awesome to have you on with us today.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I've been really looking forward to this because you and I we got to connect already,
Hmm.
and I just really appreciated the conversation that we had before, and I've been looking forward to doing this interview with you and stuff. And what I want to start. Well, first of all, I'm going to start by just giving a shout out to the folks at the Quoted platform. I found out about that, I don't know, probably a month and a half, 2 months ago from another friend of mine who runs a podcast, and he was telling me about it. And so I took a look, and my assistant put up a listing on there, and what an amazing experience this has been. And in fact, Kris, you were the very first person to respond to that.
Yep. It was
And
ironic. I had just been on at that moment and I saw it come through and I was like, your name or face looked familiar. I was like, this guy looks familiar. And I was like, hey, you're talking about $1 million relationships. I believe network, net worth, man. Like that's what I believe in. So
yeah,
it was kind of ironic that was
yeah.
there. And I'm like, yeah, but it's a cool platform.
Yeah, it is. It's a great platform, and I've met some really awesome entrepreneurs through that. And I'm incredibly grateful to my friend for just letting me know about it and stuff.
Yep.
And so, what I want to do is I want to start. I want to turn over to you to kind of start with here, Kris, because I want you to be able to talk a little bit about what you guys do, who you serve, what inspires you most about the impact you guys are making, and also share some of your backstory too, because what I do know from talking with you already, that our listeners don't yet know, but they're about to find out really fast here, is you've got a really phenomenal story. And I'm excited to just give you opportunity to share a little bit about that, because this is going to really lead into this whole thing about valuable relationships and right relationships.
Yeah, and time, how fleeting it is, and
Yeah.
and what you do with it, and whom you spend it with, right? And those are
Amen.
the relationships. So, yeah. So I've done several things. People have recognized me from back in the day when I did the real estate, and I had social media management companies and all these things, and I was really busy being busy, and my daughter was born in 2015, and I was running all over doing ventures and this and that, and for the most part I missed the, I don't know, first 6 months, 5 months of her life. I
Okay.
see her a few days a week, which is totally the wrong thing to do. If anybody's doing that, cut that shit out, like stop now immediately. But or learn the hard way.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and that's kind of what happened with me, is I ended up rupturing my appendix, which it's not that big of a deal, honestly. It happens all the time to a lot of people. But what was different about it is, a week earlier I'd actually, rewind a little bit, I had a double knee surgery, so should be laid up, should be relaxing and everything else. I didn't do that. I borrowed a car that had, a Ferrari that had paddle shifters, so I could get everywhere I needed to go fast without using my legs, because I had double knee surgery. Had to go to meetings and then Stanley Cup games, and everything was more important than my health and wellness and well-being and spending time with my daughter and family. And I ruptured my appendix, but I was too busy and I was too caught up in the ego of everything that it almost killed me. I waited a week to go into the hospital.
Wow.
And when I got there, there was a really significant chance that I wasn't leaving there. And that really kind of changes perspective in a big, big
Mhm.
way.
Mhm.
And I had done several deals before this, and I've had success with online print on demand apparel. If anybody remembers that whole world, the Teespring world, I was like one of the OGs that brought that to the market. So I had some experience and some stuff. But when I'm laying there in that hospital bed, it really kind of reminded me what mattered. And and you get to praying pretty hard, and get me out of this, bring people into my path that deserve my skill set, my
Yeah.
talents, my treasures, my time. And when you come out of the other side of that, Dugout Mugs, which is my current company, is one of the first things that was there waiting. And the guy Randall, who invented the idea, he's like, hey man, I want you to invest in this with me. I've read some articles about you and I think you're the guy, blah blah blah, whatever. And I said, well, I got no money. I burned through it all. And I said, what I do have is a really interesting skill set and tremendous relationships. And I know that's a lot of what this is about right here on this podcast. And the relationships I looked at, I said, and so how let's touch on how I look at a deal,
Yeah.
right? Can I play with my friends? Does it take time from my family? Is it experiential? Can I lean into my network to make it better? And the fun is the one of my core metrics now, not cash. How fast can I make
Yeah.
a bunch of money?
Yeah.
I don't even truly believe that money is the most valuable currency.
Amen. Yeah.
Time, relationship, capital, these things are way more valuable. Money's the easiest damn thing in the world to get if you really think about it. We don't even, it's not even connected to nothing. We just print it, right? Whatever. Anyway, one thing led to another, and dugout mugs. This guy came to me, and he takes a baseball bat barrel, hollows it out, and turns it into a beer mug. And I had just come out of the print on demand t-shirt space. So to me, this was just another canvas, right? And that's kind of the way I looked at it. And, I took my half of the company and we scaled it. We went from $50,000 and $60,000 in sales to 50 million. And, now we're, a little over $55 million in sales since 2017, which is pretty crazy. If you think about a novelty product, this isn't something people need to live. They want it.
Yeah.
They want it. And, we've been able to grow this really cool business. And along the way, I kept, and I'll talk a little bit more as it comes up about just reflection and focus, right? And I constantly am trying to reflect on those key metrics on how I do a deal. And a golf ball company came along. It's fun. I can leverage my network. It's experiential. It's scalable. I can play with my friends. It brings good to the world, right? Like, that kind of stuff. So now the things I acquire and the businesses I acquire, they all fit in my wheelhouse versus me constantly trying to change myself to chase money. Now I believe in you chase the happy, not the money.
Yeah.
And when you're chasing the happy, that money is going to show up, or other currencies that, as I mentioned a minute ago, or it could even be more valuable to you.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's all of it in a nutshell. Now, obviously, it's plenty of details along the way, but that's kind of the gist of it. I was really good. I was good enough to get most things done well, but I never dialed in on something because I was always split. And I leaned into my network hard. I'm a member of a awesome mastermind called the Board of Advisors. That's probably my number one resource for relationships and resources. And knowing, and the other thing about relationships in that group in particular, you got to know who you go to for what. Not everybody is an expert. I love Gary Vee, but his level of hustle is not attractive to me.
Sure.
So the more you reflect internally, the more you'll understand where your weak points are. And rather than try to get better at those, identify key players in your life and in your sphere of influence that can help you in those ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a mouthful, but that's the gist of
No,
it.
that is great. And there is so much alignment between you and I and how we view relationships and how we view business that, having fun with our friends. I mean, man, that's what it's all about right there, and
I was just in Chicago. I was just in Chicago last week, and I got to call one of the players for the Cubs and, hey, hook me and my family up with 4 awesome tickets. And I go up there, and then I have customers in Wrigleyville that bring us into their restaurant and feed us and buy our stuff. And we're walking around, and another guy at the street has an apparel company, makes me a custom shirt. Just like relationships are everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
It opens doors that wouldn't otherwise get opened, and experiences that wouldn't. Some of the experiences I told you about, several of them the other day. Like, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Think of how many doors have been opened from this.
Amen. Absolutely. And and really, that's what it's, that's what it's all about for me too, is it's experiences. I would much rather invest in experiences than stuff, and and because experiences, and you and I, we both are been on like a little bit of a traveling schedule the last few weeks and stuff, and just spending time with our families, and how not only important that is, but just to be able to just be there and be completely present for our wives, for our children, and all of that. Because like you shared, there was a time in your life where that wasn't happening and stuff,
Oh yeah,
and you made adjustments
wasn't
so
even on
that
my radar.
yeah, yeah,
Honestly,
yeah.
wasn't even on my radar.
And and there's a lot of entrepreneurs that provide financially for their families and stuff, but aren't really present for their
Well, but
families.
sometimes that's the excuse
Mhm,
is I'm doing
mhm.
this because I have to provide, right? And I get it, so I'm not saying they're wrong.
Sure.
Do understand that perspective, but sometimes it's a cop out.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's a cop out. Maybe you don't know how to be present. Maybe you don't know how to turn it off.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't know what is fun and exciting for you outside of that. So it consumes you. And
Yeah.
that can be dangerous and end up living on an island.
Yeah. 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 Well, now that we've got a little bit of context set here, I want to dig deeper. I'm going to switch gears just a little bit, and I'm
Okay.
going to reiterate the question around relationships for the benefit of our listeners, and then we're going to dig into this side of it a little bit. So, Kris, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons who completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And I'm really excited to hear your story, especially knowing the conversations you and I have already had around this topic. I'm really excited to hear your story and your experience around this topic of relationships.
You know what I think is interesting? Well, the answer is persons, and there's several of them for several reasons and
Yeah.
several instances. And I think that's what's important. I think if you become, let's say, yeah, it's a daily practice. If you can become the person that identifies your weaknesses, your shortcomings, and be able to equally see those strengths in others and be
Mhm.
able to connect with them in such a way that it's a mutually beneficial situation, I think that's really powerful. um, and just know that you can't handle a certain situation as well as another person in your close sphere of influence, and you can go to them for that. Sales, creative marketing, branding, relationships, networking, these are things I do very, very well. So others come to me for that sort of stuff, or we partner on things that they know that's their week. Even with my old partner, because I bought the company out about a year and a half ago, so it's all mine now. But even with the
Okay.
two of us, it was a yin and yang thing. He just got consumed by numbers, and they drove me crazy, right? Randall, I'll give. You know what? You want to talk about a person that influenced me? I would say Randall. He allowed me in a way to see when I first started. And, say, oh, if I knew now, if I knew then what I know now,
Mhm.
well, I do know now. And I had done significant things and several things before he even did his first thing. So it allowed me to help him avoid the some of the pitfalls.
Yep.
And
Yep.
he allowed me to remember certain things and the passion in certain things, right? So he's a great dude, and I'll always give him credit for that, and coming up with a cool idea, right? But when it really came down to it, he was done and burned out and ready to roll. Just had a family, just built a house, beautiful life he's got going. He was ready to be done, and I'm not really ready to be done, so
Yeah.
I took it and kept moving. But I would say Randall was one of the top ones. I don't, divine intervention, if you will. I come out of this and I'm like, send me somebody who needs my help. And I mean, nobody needed my style and their idea more than this guy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I needed something that I could get involved in, sink my teeth in, and scale.
Yeah.
And serendipitous, right? Like here we are.
Yeah.
Um, there are in business, back before Gary V was Gary V. I had an opportunity to network with him back in Tampa. There was maybe 30 of us in a room, and just sitting around a round table kind of thing, and he was a little keynote speaker, just same floor, like not even a stage. We were just chatting. So Gary had a pretty good impact on me. Later in, oh god, a decade later probably, I sent him a mug with his face on it and a letter inside that said, "Hey dude, I appreciate this, that," and I reminded him of when we met, whatever. And that lived on his back shelf forever with the note sticking out of it. I remember seeing that. That was cool.
Yeah.
um, Jesse Cole, maybe Jesse will watch this, I don't know, but Jesse, the way the Savannah Bananas owner,
Yeah.
um, his he's a visionary, and I really appreciate that, and just like the Walt Disney-ish mentality of this guy. There's such a showman, so that's really cool. And the fans first mentality that he has is neat to watch. I think
Yeah.
that certainly, I look to him sometimes for just refreshing thoughts and uh, impact, right? Which is pretty cool. And Jesse, again, I'm a relationship guy, and we could talk about things I do to maintain those relationships. But I remember Jesse told me one time we did a podcast together, and we went live on all my socials or whatever. And he mentioned that P.T. Barnum and Walt Disney were two of his muses. That's
Hmm.
his
Hmm.
hero, kind of guess.
Yeah.
I found a baseball card because I'm a baseball card guy, I like them, and I found a baseball card of P.T. Barnum in mint condition. So I
Wow.
snagged it and sent it to him and said, "Dude, I remember you said this," and he sent me a whole video back in return.
Yeah.
And I think he's handwriting letters every day, and some of the stuff that he does to stand out is really inspiring and impactful.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I would certainly say him. And then my mom, my mom. So like I said, there's several different things. I remember, my mom was a female entrepreneur 40 years ago, way before it was cool, and still has her shop to this day. So seeing some of this stuff is, I'm sure it's impacted me in a lot of different ways, and there's been
Mhm.
negative impact. I had a business partner and family member rob me for $250,000, right? Like
Wow.
I even think you got to look at the good and the bad,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
sometimes the bad can influence you just as much as the good stuff and the good people.
So let's dig into that a little bit, Kris, because when you first mentioned that to me,
Yeah.
I'm just like, wow, I mean, because I'm really big on family, and I haven't had that experience where a family member, stole $250,000 from me and stuff, and I
Sure.
can only imagine how that would make me feel finding that. Now, and I've had other entrepreneurs, not for that dollar amount, but I have definitely been taken advantage of in the past. And what hurts more than the lost money is when they reveal that that's who they are.
Yeah.
That's what hurts. And and yet I know for me personally, it hasn't dissuaded me in as far as like, because a lot of people might have an experience like that, and now they start just drawing in and like just kind of telling them stories like, well, man, partnerships are bad, or dealing with people is bad now, or whatever. And but you obviously didn't have that experience. So let's dig deeper into that. And like, how did that make you feel at the time? And what ultimately came from that experience, Kris?
I mean, I spoke to him yesterday. It didn't. I believe that if somebody's going to show you who they are, believe them. That's probably the best advice you can have there. When somebody shows you who they really are, believe them. And you can't change somebody in a relationship. You can't find somebody that's a liar, a thief, unfaithful, whatever, and marry them, and they'll get better. Then, like, it's just, you
Yeah.
can't change people, and you'll go crazy trying.
Yeah.
So um I realized that and I've lost money on several deals. There's a gentleman I did a deal with. I'm a personal guarantor on this. It was like 28 grand. It's not crazy, but realizing that a contract is only as good as the people who are in it with
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Realizing a partner is only as trustworthy as the um, greed or struggles they deal with in their own life, right? So what it taught me is about building parameters and guardrails and checks and balances, and it made me a better businessman from that respect.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
even with this deal, I had, there was some early investors that have been bought out, but the structure of that deal was not proper. It was called predatory, right? But
Okay.
uh, realizing that paperwork and contracts and guardrails and guidelines and things like that are of the utmost importance when you're putting a deal together. So I believe you're winning or learning. And if I I lost money, I lost money, right? I overpaid an investor to get the hell out. Whatever.
Mhm.
I kept the relationship, you know, which in my mind, now some relationships aren't worth keeping. And I think that's an important thing to touch on here too on a
Okay.
podcast that focuses on that. Some relationships aren't worth keeping. You
Mhm.
outgrow people, morally, ethically, spiritually, financially, emotionally. You outgrow people in a lot of ways. So taking the time to reflect on where you stand in these areas will tell you where you need to be,
Yeah.
and if you're always the wealthiest in the room or the smartest in the room or the most philanthropic in the room or the most emotionally in touch in the room or whatever, you're in the wrong room. You
Mhm.
need to graduate to the next room or a different room. It doesn't have to be leveling up all the time. Sometimes the levels come with additional struggles, problems, and things like that. It's just a constant practice of reflection in my mind on
Yeah.
where you're trying to go
Yeah.
and who you want to go there with and what that looks like, feels like, kind of thing. Depends on the relationships you
Yeah. Yeah.
need to keep.
So what is what are is an example or two of where you personally, you got to make a really substantial impact. Maybe even in the moment, it might have surprised you a little bit, but you also know that would have never happened if not for the relationship you had with whoever that was that helped led to that. What's an example of something like that, Kris?
God, almost every business I've started. I
Yeah.
mean, dugout for sure.
Okay.
Literally, the I got on board and we
So
doubled
when did you get on board with Dugout, Kris? What year was it?
2017. It,
2017.
it, it
Okay.
just it was about 6 months old, really,
Okay.
at that point. Averaging about 10 grand a month, give or take.
Hmm.
And I said, look, I have a relationship with a company which I had equity in,
Hmm.
and 1 point to be on 1.5 points, so very little equity.
Hmm.
It was just a big from a consulting deal I did. Anyway, I said I know the people that do licensing for Major League Baseball players, not the teams, the players.
Hmm.
And I said, if I make one phone call, we're going to have licensing. And I called and I said, hey, what's up? This is Kris. I'm one of the owners of blank. We already have licensing with you. I have another company. I want to get licensing. We had licensing in 6 weeks. Right.
That's
And then that, one thing led to another. And then I have a way of just penetrating networks and then just infiltrating them, right,
awesome.
in a good positive way.
Hmm.
But um, that's what I did. And I mean, we like a rocket ship. I mean, we broke every system, sold every mug, and we're 1,000 orders behind in like 4 months.
Wow.
First four
Wow.
months after I got on board. So obviously, without a doubt, that dugout has been one of those situations. Um, and then you go all the way back to 20, what was it, 2001, 2, 3, 4, somewhere there. I was in the gym industry,
Okay.
and and I was the general manager of a gym in my early 20s. I must have been 22 maybe. And I leveraged this new website called Facebook that came out in 2006, 5 or 6, something like that. And I was leveraging this technology to drive people in the front door, and I was just top sales, just closing everything. And because of some of my relationship with technology, it allowed me to really impact that deal I was in. And then one thing led to the next and the next and the next. But um, it the old saying, it's not it's who you know.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
the better iteration of that is it's not who you know, it's who knows you.
Hmm.
And that's
Hmm.
what I've always really focused on, is being that person, providing a value so that it makes me memorable.
Yeah.
And it's not your job to remember me, it's my job to be unforgettable.
Hmm.
And that's why I wear what I wear. I am who I am, unapologetically authentic everywhere, all the time, because that really contributes to um, being locked in other people's mind, and then it's consistency at that point. So then the relationship building is just a consistent follow up, touching base, FaceTime, 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 and that's really what I've. It's just kind of second nature to me, and I
Yeah.
think I think that is what has impacted my family. Um, it's impacted my daughters tremendously. My 10-year-old is I would feel comfortable her like starting a business,
Hmm.
with it's to that level. So I think me and my relationships and my way of going about relationships and communication with other people, um, it impacts everything.
Yeah.
But a deal
Yeah.
specific, obviously, dugout would be the biggest example of that.
Yeah. So what are a couple examples of relationships that have, been made possible to you because you got involved in dugout mugs, because you started going down that path, so maybe it was, so, I mean, I know you're probably thinking like, man, Kev, where do I even start on that?
Yeah, I mean, you want to
Because
start
there's
3 days
probably
ago, like
lots.
yeah. Yeah, I was just in Chicago 3 days ago, and we called, one of the Cubs players. We know a couple of them,
Okay.
and they hooked us up with tickets to the game. And then we were over here at the guy's bar, like I said earlier, having some lunch here, and then go and a guy makes me a custom shirt over here, and that's all. Everybody behind me. This is all a player, Hall of Famer, celebrity. This is Ron DeSantis. This is John Daly. That's Griffey, Tebow, the guy that wrote the Sandlot, gave me the the Sandlot hats that we have. Like, um, it's really unreal. I mean, uh, earlier this year, Reggie Jackson has us out, the famous New York Yankee
Mhm.
and Oakland A. Let's give him some credit in Oakland. Um, he has me out to his event every year. For 3 years running now, they have our product as the gift for all the VIPs.
Okay.
And VIPs, I mean, I'm talking VIPs, man. Like the Jeters and the Jordans and the Dave Chappelles and the 50 Cent. Like this is studded, this star-studded event, and I don't get in those doors without it. I don't give Ken Griffey Jr. a lifetime achievement award without it.
Yeah.
I don't hang out with the governor of Florida and presidential runner, without it. I don't drink drinks with John Daly and on his bus in Nashville without it. That event at Reggie's, we ended up having a breakfast. It was me and Emmett Smith and Tim Tebow and Urban Meyer and John Smoltz, and Barry Bonds was on the right of me. I'm like, what am I doing at this table?
Yeah. Right.
Right. And
Yeah.
it's just like six dudes just chopping it up.
Yep.
That wouldn't happen. Um, yeah, it's just it is so aligned with what I value that I don't work. I don't feel like I work at all. It's some days are tough, and managing the business, but really if you ask me where most of the value comes, it's the people in the relationships, it's the opportunities, it's the doors that are open, um, and the people that know me, not
Yeah.
just the other way around.
Yeah. 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 Wow.
Yeah, every one of these is a player we've worked with. I mean,
Yeah.
Frank, I'm reading backwards, but I see Frank Thomas and Andre Dawson and Big Poppy, Pedro, Miggy, Mariano Rivera, Griffey. I mean, Verlander, and that's just what I could see backwards
Yeah.
on a computer. Like kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. And so from where you sit right now, Kris, what's the vision? What kind of vision do you have for the company going forward? What do you see going forward?
Um, what I see going forward is really taking a step backwards to make sure that so when I took over, there was a lot of it's like you buy a Ferrari, you lift the hood, it's ragged out, and you're like, okay, now I have to become a mechanic. And it's not the first time I built a business or fixed a problem or know the person to call to fix the problem, which is also very important when it comes to relationships. You're not always on an island trying to figure it out. Um, it's about just figuring out what is scalable and what level is enough with our current, we're moving facilities here in a few months. Our product line is developing. I'm attending a trade show in Atlanta here in a week or so, to just go there and kind of get some feedback on some new product lines. We're dropping ornaments, baseball ornaments, to be a little seasonal. Wondering, do I diversify a little bit further into additional sports now that we have this ecosystem that knows us, loves us, trusts us? Do I touch back? I did a couple, $20 million in apparel. Do we launch some apparel lines? And trying to figure out how to become a more diverse ecosystem for the 1.5 million customers we have,
Mhm.
and still be attractive enough that we can scale. So that's really kind of where we're at now. It's cleaning up the mess. There's a lot of mess to clean up that I wasn't ready for.
Okay.
So, so we're still going to crank out, whatever, however many $1 million in sales we do a year and stuff like that. And it's going to stay profitable. But I think we're about 6 months to 8 months out from scaling back up.
Okay.
And that's okay, because now in the past it's a speed to market. They say 3 to 5 years and exit, sell it on the way up. Like, I'm having, if somebody wants to come buy it from me, that's okay, but they better like it more than I do,
Mhm.
because I'll tell you right now, like, I'm having a lot of fun. And if all I do is make enough money to cover all my bills, and they're, I got bills, I got family, we live well, right? So, if we make enough money to just pay bills, and I take care of all my people, and I get to go do this stuff
Mhm.
all the time
Mhm.
and take 10 vacations, little mini vacays a year, like my kids are go to a nice private school, and like all the things that matter to me,
Yep.
why would I sell it? Like,
Yeah.
but again, like, someone may want it really bad because it goes in well with what they have going on. At that point, I'll have to make that decision. But um, my point is I'm not in a rush to figure that out. It's not
Yeah.
even on my radar,
Yeah.
uh, because I know what number would interest me, and we're not there.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm curious now, based on what you just shared, and I don't think I've ever asked this question on this podcast before, after 300 plus episodes. Are you much of a planner for the future? I mean, like, planning your, I got a good friend of mine. He's a financial planner, and his company serves a lot of entrepreneurs. And
Yeah.
so are you a big financial planner for the future and stuff, or what's your
Nope.
take on that, Kris?
Nope. Um, do what you do best and outsource the rest. That's my
Mhm.
take on it.
Mhm.
So I have a good friend of mine, Adam. He's a financial guy. He shaves it right off the top. I don't even see it. My kids are getting paid, W-2. They're getting paid. Their Roths are getting filled every year. Their SEPs are getting filled every year. We have money monthly going to their, all these different buckets, right?
Mhm.
I'm doing the things that, you know, to be honest, my family couldn't, my parents couldn't do for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and not that they couldn't, I just think they didn't have the know-how or the understand why.
Sure.
So,
Sure.
you know, and for several years we didn't have a lot, and so maybe they couldn't. But
Mhm.
for me, it's invest first. I have a significant crypto portfolio. I have investments in 6 to 8 companies, early startups, uh, through my Roth and some other things like that. So I mean, I do plan in that regard, but I feel like time and control are illusions. So, you know, everybody has a plan. Was it Mike Tyson? Everybody has a plan to get punched in the mouth,
That's right.
something like that, you know. And I got punched in the mouth, and I realized how irrelevant that plan was. And
Yeah.
and again, like I can even look back to maybe when I was 18, 19, and I remember my stepdad and I laughed about it the other day. Uh, you know, they come from a generation where you grow, you go to school, you get education, you go to, you know, college, you work till you're 60, and then you retire, and you get your scraps and you shut up about it, and
Yeah.
you know, you're too old to travel, your knees don't work, fat, you're broke. You know, I was just like, I don't know. It sounds like kind of shitty model. Like, I'm not gonna
Yeah.
do that. And I remember they both were crying in the kitchen, and I said, you know, I don't think I want to go to school. I, you know, I graduated with high honors from high school, but I was like, I don't really want to go to college. So I did that for about 6 weeks and quit. Never went back. Um, you know, I've never been a planner. I just kind of have faith and trust my gut
Yeah.
a lot,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
sometimes your brain will get in the way of your sense. You know,
Yeah.
you can overthink things real quick,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
try to do what other people think is the best versus try to really feel in your gut what's good, what's the right move for you.
Mhm. Mhm.
You know, I'd rather die trying to do something bigger than to just, you know, eke along and do something mediocre. Because
Yeah.
at that point, what was the point?
Yeah. My buddy Jesse, have we've had conversations about this, but the only thing that we're really guaranteed is like right here, right now, this moment.
Yeah,
And a lot of people can like focus on the future, and I want to plan, and my buddy that works with so many entrepreneurs, he's like, Kevin, they're all planning for that day, and especially non-entrepreneurs, they're all about planning so that one day they can retire and finally start enjoying life the way they really want to enjoy it and stuff.
yeah.
And once they retire, now for the rest of their life, they're wondering, did I plan well enough? And the thing is they can never answer that question. They can never answer that
Right.
question.
You can't
And
quantify it. Do you listen? What kind of music do you listen to?
oh, I listen to lots of different kind. I listen to country. I listen to rock. I love old rock and roll and stuff for
Yeah,
sure.
I do too. There's a song by Kenny Chesney called "The Life."
I'm a huge Kenny Chesney fan.
Yeah, so am I. So am I.
Yeah, yeah,
But it's called "The Life," and he talks about, I'm gonna do this. I'm working nest egg, and once I retire, I'm gonna come down here and fishing in the morning and have beers with my friends. He's like, I do that already.
yeah,
You know, the fisherman is the gist of it, and it's like, man,
yeah,
what an ass backwards system. And
yeah,
and one of the things that I love to talk about is just currency, in the pure sense of the word. Current is, current, and currency is the, currencies. And I had a great talk with Doria Cordova, who wrote the book Money and You. She was one of Robert Kiyosaki's mentors back in the
okay,
day. And Dory and I had lunch one day, and we were talking about this, and just a wonderful woman. And we were talking about currency, and she's like, I've never heard anybody explain it that way, but it was so perfect. And all I was saying is that there is a world where multiple currencies coexist parallel that are always flowing, and money's never yours. You just have a turn with it. right? And
Yeah.
with that in mind, putting that something so common as money on a pedestal when there's all these other currencies you could be collecting: relationship equity,
Yeah.
time with family, experiences, fulfillment. There's, and it's up to you what those currencies are,
Yeah.
but there's a world where these things all flow simultaneously, and you can choose which one of those to collect. Because I've seen a lot of people with really full bank accounts full of cash and dollars,
Yep.
but they're empty from a fulfillment standpoint. They're empty
Yeah.
from a time perspective. They're empty from a family. There's no legacy. There's no nothing. And it's, again, I'll say it again, it's a daily practice to understand what is important to you and what is not important to you, and then build these metrics for yourself
Yeah.
and have constant reminders. Which, yesterday financially for me was a bad day, and I didn't go to bed upset about it. I had a great other aspects of the yesterday.
Mhm.
So it's, again, I just collect different currencies, which will keep you sane. It'll keep you sane too, because
Yeah.
if all you're ever trying to do is grab a dollar, the day the dollar doesn't show up is a bad day. But
Yeah.
if you're collecting other currencies simultaneously, it allows you other, vehicles to happiness and fulfillment, which is kind of cool if you
Yeah.
think about it.
For
Because you're
sure.
not taking none of it with you anyway.
That's right. That's right. We ain't leaving here with none of it, man.
No, no. I mean, I could give my kids a good shot. Give them some money and give them some. So, but I taught my daughter when she was 8 years old, bro. I taught her about investing, and she had a Roth IRA, and she invested in SpaceX. I was like, do you want to do cars, or do you want to do spaceships? And it was Tesla was the other one that we were going to put the money in. And she's like, I want to do spaceships, Daddy. And I was like, all right. So we got her stock, some founder stock in SpaceX. There was somebody selling it, so we got access to it, and it's like 5x,
Yeah.
2 years. So, like, I'm teaching her about that. I take her to a farmer's market. I don't need to be at a farmer's market, but I'll take her and I'll sit right there next to her and let her hustle and work and talk to people, create relationships, count change, pocket money, earn, buy
Yeah.
her own stuff. So my point of that is like you said, we can't take anything with us. So you better be damn certain what you're leaving behind.
That's right.
And I'm hopefully leaving somebody that is capable, right? Because I can look around. I mean, every time you jump on social media, there's some goofball that's completely out of their mind, not capable of even functioning normally, which is wild. But that's a whole other podcast. But
Yeah.
it's like I want to leave somebody who can navigate this crazy world and understand that relationships are extremely valuable,
Yeah.
and be the person that everybody needs and wants to know or be around, because
Yeah.
you make them or their situation or their atmosphere better.
Yeah.
And I feel like if I leave that, the money's pointless.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Well, Kris, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today. And you know, for anybody that's listening to this right now, going, man, Kev, I really like and appreciate Kris and just love how he shows up. Any websites, any resources we can share if they want to follow up and find out more about what you guys are doing and stuff?
Yeah. Support the vision. I mean, dugoutmugs.com. We
Okay.
do incredible stuff. Literally one of a kind, super high quality. We make mugs for Coke, Pepsi, Coors, Miller, Yamava, Fox Sports. I mean, you name it. Like, we're making, we do a lot of corporate gifting, custom logo stuff,
Okay.
and we engrave it into the side like this. Like, this is
Very
one we made
cool.
for Pete Rose when he passed. Walked away
Okay.
from the cornfield, but
Wow.
yeah. And then we cut baseballs in half and turn them into bottle openers and that stuff. And then Big Golf is my golf line. It's a USGA quality golf ball, good
Okay.
ball. But we do in-house customization. So if
Okay.
you have events coming up and you want to do custom logos and stuff like that, we do all that in-house, and the pricing is wildly better than pretty much anywhere online. Passion project. I'm having a lot of fun. I get to do beer, baseball, golf, and cigars every day, so I'm not mad about that. Yeah, like supporting that vision, and because the people that work with me and for me are amazing people. So the more we're doing, the better they're doing, and that's just good stuff.
Yeah.
Um, Socials, I feel, are just a time and life suck. I don't play around with them. LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn, so business wise, I'm over there. I'm the only one. You can't miss me. But
Okay.
yeah, other than that, social, we really don't. I mean, you go to dugoutmugs.com and find dugout mugs everywhere because we have to have a social face. But me, it's LinkedIn or somewhere else
Yep. Yep.
in real life where real connections happen.
Amen. Amen. Well, Kris, once again, thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today. Really appreciate it and really appreciate you, man.
Thanks, dude. I appreciate it, man. Everybody have an amazing week, whatever day it is when you're watching it. Take
For
care of
sure.
yourself.
Yeah.